Most Americans have never tasted the fruit that saved entire tribes from starvation, yet it's probably growing within 50 miles of your house right now. Most Americans have never heard of pawpaw, yet it grows wild in 26 states. That's more states than apples grow naturally in. The fruit tastes like a cross between a banana and a mango, which explains why early settlers called it poor man's banana. Makes sense, right? Native Americans knew better than to ignore this treasure. They mashed ripe pawpaws into dense cakes that could last through brutal winters. Smart move when you consider that pawpaws pack more vitamin C than apples and nearly as much potassium as bananas. These weren't just survival snacks, they were nutritional powerhouses hiding in plain sight. But here's where things get interesting. The pawpaw's biggest strength is also its fatal flaw. The flesh is so incredibly soft and delicate that it bruises if you look at it wrong. Try shipping pawpaws to grocery stores and you'll end up with expensive mush. That's why you've probably never seen one at your local supermarket, despite pawpaws being completely native to American soil. The weird part is how pawpaws ripen. They start green and hard as rocks, then suddenly turn into creamy custard almost overnight. Miss that perfect window, and you've got brown goop. Catch it right, and you're holding something that tastes better than most tropical fruits you can buy. Modern foragers and adventurous chefs have rediscovered what Native Americans knew centuries ago. Pawpaw ice cream has become legendary in certain circles. The fruit makes incredible puddings and smoothies, too. Some people describe the flavor as banana meets vanilla custard with a hint of tropical vacation. Others say it tastes like childhood summer memories they never actually had. Wild pawpaw trees still dot forests from Georgia to Michigan, quietly producing America's most forgotten native fruit. They bloom with dark purple flowers that smell faintly like rotting meat. Nature's way of attracting the flies that pollinate them, beauty, and stink in perfect harmony. Of course, pawpaws aren't the only native fruit that early Americans relied on for survival. Another berry was so important that tribes turned it into portable energy bars for long journeys. After pawpaws dominated eastern woodlands, another forgotten fruit was making its mark in the wetlands and northern forests. Chokeberries earned their dramatic name for good reason. Bite into a raw one, and your mouth puckers so hard you'll think someone replaced your saliva with sandpaper. But here's where Native American ingenuity kicked in. They didn't just tolerate the intense sourness, they turned it into survival fuel. Tribes mixed chokeberries with dried meat and fat to create pemmican, the ultimate travel food that could last months without spoiling. Think of it as the original energy bar, except it actually worked. The secret? Those tongue-twisting tannins that make raw chokeberries so brutal also pack more antioxidants than blueberries. We're talking serious nutritional firepower here. These small black or red berries were essentially nature's medicine cabinet wrapped in a fruit. Cooking transforms chokeberries completely. Heat breaks down those harsh compounds, revealing a deep wine-like sweetness underneath. Indigenous cooks knew this trick centuries before anyone understood the science behind it. They'd simmer chokeberries into thick sauces, dry them for winter storage, or blend them into other foods to boost nutrition. Today, chokeberry bushes still grow wild across Canada and the northern United States, thriving in wetlands where other fruits give up. They're incredibly hardy, surviving harsh winters, wet soils, and neglect that would kill most cultivated plants. Makes sense why our ancestors relied on them, right? Modern research backs up what Native Americans knew instinctively. Chokeberry juice can help lower blood pressure, and those antioxidants fight inflammation like tiny cellular bodyguards. Health food stores now sell chokeberry supplements for premium prices, while the same berries grow free in countless wild spaces. Wild food enthusiasts make chokeberry jam, juice, and even wine from foraged berries. The key is adding sweetener and cooking them properly. Raw chokeberries remain as puckering as ever. While chokeberries dominated the northern wetlands with their medicinal powers, even colder regions harbored their own treasure. Far above the tree line, where most fruits fear to grow, one golden berry became legendary among Arctic peoples. If chokeberries had you thinking about tough northern living, wait until you meet their even hardier cousin. Cloudberries grow in places where most plants would simply give up and die. We're talking Alaska, northern Canada, and those boggy areas where the ground stays frozen half the year. These golden orange berries earned the nickname Northern Gold for good reason. Here's what makes cloudberries fascinating. They taste like someone mixed apricots with citrus fruits. Sweet, but with this bright tang that wakes up your taste buds. Indigenous groups in the Arctic knew something we're just rediscovering. These little gems pack serious vitamin C, enough to prevent scurvy during those brutal northern winters when fresh food was basically non existent. The weird part is how they grow. One berry per plant. That's it. Most berries cluster together like grapes or grow in bunches, but cloudberries are loners. Each plant produces exactly one golden berry, which probably explains why they're so expensive when you can actually find them. Then there's the survival factor. While other fruits need perfect conditions, cloudberries thrive in cold bogs where the soil is acidic and waterlogged. They're loaded with fiber, vitamin C, and something called ellagic acid that's great for heart health. Makes sense that people living in harsh climates would rely on something this nutritionally dense, right? But here's the catch. You can't exactly run to the grocery store and grab a pint. Cloudberries are still wild, still rare, and still growing in those remote northern places where they've always grown. If you live in Alaska or far northern Canada, you might stumble across them during berry season. For everyone else, they remain this almost mythical fruit that costs more per pound than some steaks. The locals who know where to find them guard their secret spots fiercely. Can you blame them? When something this unique only grows in your backyard, it becomes more than food. It becomes treasure. Speaking of treasures hiding in plain sight, there's another forgotten fruit that once fed entire communities across a completely different landscape. Native American tribes didn't mess around when it came to persimmons. They dried them, baked them into bread, and turned them into puddings that could last through brutal winters. Smart move, considering these orange globes pack serious nutritional punch. Here's the catch, though. Bite into an unripe persimmon, and your mouth will pucker so hard you'll think you swallowed a cotton ball soaked in vinegar. The astringency is no joke. Your saliva literally disappears, leaving you with a chalky, bitter mess that makes you question every life choice. But wait until that same fruit turns mushy soft, almost like it's rotting. Pure magic happens. Ripe persimmons taste like nature's candy crossed with honey. The flesh becomes silky, almost custard-like, bursting with natural sugars that make your taste buds do a happy dance. Native tribes knew this secret well. Timing was everything. They'd wait until the fruit practically fell off the tree, then harvest pounds of the stuff. The nutritional profile backs up all that patience. These orange beauties are loaded with beta carotene, which your body converts to vitamin A for healthy vision and immune function. They're also packed with vitamin C and natural sugars that provide quick energy without the crash you get from processed sweets. Wild persimmon trees still dot the landscape across the Midwest and South. You'll find them in old farmsteads, along creek beds, and hiding in forgotten corners of suburban neighborhoods. The trees are tough survivors, handling drought and poor soil like champions. Modern foragers and adventurous bakers are rediscovering what indigenous peoples knew centuries ago. Persimmon pudding, once a staple dessert in rural America, is making a comeback. The fruit works beautifully in jams, breads, and even ice cream. Some creative cooks dry them like the tribes did, creating chewy treats that concentrate all those natural sugars. The tricky part? Most grocery stores don't carry wild persimmons because they're too delicate to ship. You've got to know where to look or grow your own. Speaking of fruits that thrive in harsh conditions where grocery store varieties would shrivel up and die, while most people think of the desert as a barren wasteland, Native American tribes in the Southwest knew better. They had banana yucca. This wasn't just survival food, it was dessert. The banana yucca plant looks like someone stuck a bunch of swords in the ground and called it a day. Sharp, spiky leaves jut out in all directions. But here's the twist. Those scary-looking plants produce some surprisingly sweet fruit. The pods hang like green bananas from tall stalks, which is probably how this desert oddball got its name. Raw banana yucca fruit, hard pass. It's tough, fibrous, and about as appetizing as chewing on a leather boot. But roast it over a fire or boil it in water, and something magical happens. The flesh turns jammy and sweet, almost like eating nature's version of fruit leather. Southwestern tribes knew this trick centuries ago, turning these desert survivors into a reliable food source when everything else was dying of thirst. And the weird part is, Banana yucca didn't stop at just feeding people. The flowers were edible too. Tribes would roast them like vegetables. The roots got mashed into soap for washing. Those sharp leaves, perfect for weaving baskets and making rope. Talk about getting your money's worth from one plant. These resilient plants still dot the landscape across Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Texas. They laugh at drought conditions that would kill most garden plants. No water for months? No problem. Poor, rocky soil? Even better. They're basically the desert's answer to a Swiss Army knife. Useful, tough, and completely unbothered by harsh conditions. Modern adventurous cooks have rediscovered banana yucca, turning the cooked fruit into unique jams and desert-themed desserts. But you won't find these at your local grocery store anytime soon. The fruit is still best gathered fresh from wild plants. Speaking of coastal contrasts, while banana yucca thrives in America's driest regions, there's another forgotten fruit that made its home in the exact opposite environment, right along the salty, windswept shores of the East Coast. While most people think of plums as something you buy at the grocery store, there's a wild cousin growing right on America's coastline that indigenous tribes have been harvesting for centuries. Beach plums thrive in one of the harshest environments imaginable: sandy dunes where salt spray burns most plants to death, and winds never stop howling. These scrappy little fruits don't mess around. They've mastered the art of surviving where nothing else can, clinging to coastal areas from Maine all the way down to Virginia. Native tribes quickly figured out that beach plums weren't just tough, they were incredibly useful. The tartly sweet fruits got turned into sauces that made other foods taste better, preserves that lasted through winter, and even natural purple dye for clothing and crafts. But here's what makes beach plums really special. Most fruit trees need perfect soil, regular watering, and protection from harsh weather. Beach plums actually prefer the punishment. They grow bigger and produce more fruit when they're getting blasted by ocean winds and rooted in pure sand. It's like they're the tough kids of the fruit world who thrive on adversity. The berries themselves pack serious nutritional power too. They're loaded with antioxidants and vitamin A, giving your body the good stuff while delivering a flavor that's part plum, part wild berry, with a tangy kick that wakes up your taste buds. Fresh off the bush, they're pretty tart, but cook them down and the natural sugars concentrate into something amazing. What's really cool is that this tradition hasn't completely disappeared. Small coastal communities still hold beach plum festivals where locals gather the wild fruit and turn it into jelly the old-fashioned way. These little gatherings keep alive knowledge that's been passed down for generations. How to spot the best bushes when the fruit is perfectly ripe, and the secret tricks for making jelly that actually sets properly. Speaking of wild fruits that refuse to quit in tough environments, there's another forgotten gem that grows in completely different conditions but shows the same kind of stubborn resilience. While beach plums hug the Atlantic coast, something completely different was thriving on the opposite side of the continent. The Pacific Northwest had its own wild treasure, and it came with a name that confused everyone who heard it. Oregon grape isn't a grape at all, it's not even close. These sharp, blue-purple berries grow in tight clusters on spiky evergreen shrubs that look more like holly than anything you'd find in a vineyard. Native tribes knew better than to judge by appearances, though. They've been turning these sour little powerhouses into refreshing drinks and medicine for centuries. The berries pack a serious punch of vitamin C, which made perfect sense for people living in the rainy, cloudy Northwest. But here's where it gets interesting. Oregon grape contains something called berberine, a compound that modern science has gotten pretty excited about for gut health. The indigenous people were basically making natural probiotics before anyone knew what those were. Unlike those delicate beach plums that needed sandy coastal conditions, Oregon grape is tough as nails. Fire? No problem. Poor soil? Bring it on. These evergreen shrubs just keep going, which explains why they're still everywhere from Oregon up through Washington and into British Columbia. You'll spot them in forests, along trails, and probably in someone's backyard without them even knowing what they have. The taste is definitely an acquired one. Think of the sourest blueberry you've ever had. Then make it sourer. Raw Oregon grape berries will make your face scrunch up faster than a lemon. But cook them down into syrups or jams. Magic happens. That sharp tartness mellows into something complex and almost wine-like. Modern foragers have figured out what the tribes knew all along. These berries shine when you work with their natural personality instead of fighting it. Mix them with sweeter fruits, add some honey, and suddenly you've got something special. Speaking of special, there's another forgotten fruit that takes sweetness to a completely different level, hiding in the swamps of the American South, where spring floods create their own kind of harvest magic. While Oregon's berries were keeping Pacific Northwest tribes healthy, something completely different was floating around southern swamps. Literally floating. Mayhaws are one of the few fruits that actually float when they're ripe, bobbing on murky swamp water like tiny red life preservers. These small crimson fruits might look ordinary, but they pack more vitamin C than most citrus. Native tribes figured this out centuries ago, wading into knee-deep swamp water every spring to collect nature's floating treasure. The weird part? The trees only grow in places most people wouldn't want to visit: flooded bottomlands, soggy creek beds, and mosquito infested wetlands across Louisiana, East Texas, and parts of Arkansas. But here's where it gets interesting. Mayhaws ripen in May, hence the name, right when southern swamps flood from spring rains. The trees literally drop their fruit into the water on purpose. Smart strategy, actually. The floating berries spread seeds downstream while early settlers learned to paddle canoes through swampy groves, scooping up handfuls of free fruit. The taste hits you like a tart apple mixed with cranberry, but sweeter. Indigenous groups mashed them into preserves that lasted months without spoiling. Makes sense, right? All those natural antioxidants and acids work like built-in preservatives. Modern Southerners still hunt for wild mayhaw trees, though most folks have forgotten they exist. Those who remember swear by mayhaw jelly. It's got this unique flavor that's impossible to replicate with store-bought fruit. Pink-red color, tangy sweet taste, and enough vitamin C to make your immune system do backflips. The trees themselves are survivors. They handle floods, droughts, and soil that would kill most fruit trees. Hurricane comes through, mayhaws just bend and keep growing. Drought hits, their deep roots find water somewhere. You'll still find mayhaw jelly at small southern food festivals, usually sold by older folks who remember their grandparents' recipes. But most people walking past those festival booths have no idea they're looking at a forgotten superfood that once kept entire communities healthy. Speaking of forgotten foods that hide in plain sight, there's another native fruit that disguises itself so well, most people mistake it for a weed. Ever found a fruit that comes with its own gift wrapping? Ground cherries do exactly that. These golden little gems hide inside papery husks that look like tiny Chinese lanterns swaying in the breeze. Native American groups figured out this sweet secret centuries ago, popping them like candy and tossing them into their baked goods. The weird part is how these fruits basically wrap themselves up for storage. That papery husk isn't just for show, it protects the fruit inside and makes them last way longer than most berries. Smart design, right? But here's where ground cherries get really interesting. They taste like a tropical vacation decided to crash a Midwestern garden party. One bite gives you pineapple, then a hint of vanilla, maybe some mango if you're lucky. It's like nature couldn't decide what flavor to make them, so it just threw in a little bit of everything good. Then there's the gardening magic. Plant one ground cherry and you'll have fruit for years. They self-seed like crazy, spreading to new spots and giving you dozens of fruits per plant. Native groups love this about them. Minimal work for maximum sweet reward. These little powerhouses pack vitamins A and C, plus decent antioxidant levels. Not bad for something that basically grows itself. The husks even make great decorations once you've eaten all the fruit. 2-for-1 deal. What makes ground cherries really special is how they've stayed under the radar. While everyone's fighting over the last good peach at the grocery store, ground cherries are quietly doing their thing in backyards and wild spaces across America. They're gaining popularity again among gardeners who want something unique for their homemade jams. Modern jam makers are catching on to what Native Americans knew all along. These fruits make incredible preserves. The natural sweetness means less added sugar, and that tropical flavor profile creates jams that taste like nothing you'll find in stores. Speaking of wild fruits with staying power, there's another forgotten native that's been quietly feeding Americans for generations in plain sight. You've probably walked past thousands of American plum trees without even knowing it. These scraggly-looking shrubs love forming dense thickets along forest edges, abandoned lots, and anywhere humans have given up trying to control nature. Wild, right? Native tribes knew exactly what they were looking at. They'd return to the same thickets year after year, timing their visits perfectly for when the small reddish purple plums reached peak ripeness. Unlike the massive juicy plums we see in grocery stores, these wild ones are about the size of a large cherry. But here's the thing, they pack way more flavor per bite. The tartness hits you first, then a surprisingly sweet finish that made these plums perfect for drying into leathery strips. Indigenous people would pound the dried fruit into pemmican or store whole plums in bark containers for winter. Smart move considering these little fruits are loaded with vitamin C and antioxidants. Then there's the ecosystem angle most people miss completely. American plum thickets become wildlife magnets. Birds nest in the thorny branches, bees go crazy for the early spring blossoms, and deer browse the leaves. One thicket feeds dozens of species throughout the year. But here's where it gets interesting for modern foragers. These trees spread by sending up shoots from their roots, creating natural fruit orchards that maintain themselves. No pruning, no fertilizing, no worrying about pests. They just keep producing year after year, even in terrible soil. The weird part is how they've adapted to disturbance. Fire, flooding, construction. American plums actually thrive after getting knocked around. They'll pop back up from their root system stronger than before. Makes you wonder why we don't see more of them in permaculture designs. Small-scale jam makers have started seeking out wild American plum patches again. The intense flavor means a little fruit goes a long way in preserves. Some adventurous folks are even transplanting thicket starts to their property edges, creating their own wild fruit hedge. These forgotten natives prove that sometimes the best things come in small, slightly stubborn packages that refuse to disappear completely.